Righto guys, how's it going? Craig here. I'm just back again to talk about the civil media idea that I want to have a crack at, as opposed to social media. So I made an initial video which I'll link to in the description. It's a longer video and it goes into sort of the philosophy. There it is. You'll find it on the Year Now page, but I'll link to it below in the description. And it's quite a long one, 32 minutes, and it goes into a bit of philosophy and political theory and all that kind of thing, making a case pretty much for civil media, why it's a good time for it, why it's possible to transition from doing all that sort of stuff offline to putting it online, not entirely, but at least partially. And I sent the link to Michael, and Michael sort of responded. I was chuffed because, yeah, he got it. He got where I was coming from, where I was trying to go to, which is good because it's not the kind of thing that appeals to everyone. But yeah, no, he got it, and then he mentioned Roger Scruton and a couple of quotes that I really liked, and so now I know Roger Scruton. So let me just show you a little bit from what Michael's got to say.
We needed, as Craig did, step back and get into the significance of civil society. I've got one of the great conservative thinkers is a guy called, he's now Sir Scruton, I think, Sir Roger Scruton. And he wrote a book, something like How to Be a Conservative. And Chapter 10, The Truth in Conservatism, where he goes into what conservatism is. I'm going to read from his book right now. It says, conservatism is not in the business of correcting human nature or shaping it according to some conception or the ideal rational chooser. Conception of the ideal rational chooser. It attempts to understand how societies work and how to make the space required for them to work successfully. And that's a big part of what my philosophies are. I really hate it when someone, even if it's a good idea, if someone decides for me that I must share their good idea and my life and space must be invaded with this notion that they're excited about, therefore I must be excited about. I read on and it says, it talks about free association. Free association is necessary to us, not only because no man is an island, but because intrinsic values emerge from social cooperation. They are not imposed by some outside authority or instilled through fear. They grow from below through relations of love, respect, and accountability. And I really like that about conservatism. I think that explains why people tend to be liberal when you're young and conservative when you're old. When you're young, you have a good idea. Kind of like that song Father and Son by Cat Stevens. You have a good idea and you think, well, I better rush out and tell everyone about it and yell in their faces and break in and find them where they are and put to them that they must believe what I believe, because what I believe is such a good idea. And you become frustrated and annoyed when people don't share your belief, or when they don't understand that you're trying to save the world. Why are you being so difficult about this? But as you grow up, you understand that, yes, you had a good idea, and nothing about conservatism or liberalism changes what you have as a good idea. It's how you're going about communicating your idea to absolutely everyone. You're protesting against them and having slogans and shouting at them, which Twitter, Facebook, because it's a liberal idea of forcing your idea upon another person. But you realize that if you want a person to share your idea, befriend them, learn about them, care about them, have a small circle of friends and help out and meet their wife or husband, or let your kids play with their kids and take your time, and through relations of love, respect, and accountability, you might eventually convey your idea. You'll never impose it by some outside authority, or you may actually get the appearance of opposing it or instilling it through fear. But these intrinsic values, the good idea, do emerge through social cooperation. And to have social cooperation, we need to have a civil society, as Craig says, to act without being acted upon. So the liberals, and all of the world, but the liberals have the Facebook and Twitter, in which you have your good idea and you project out onto someone. But maybe conservatives or the right wing of politics needs to have this civil media where you take your time, slow down, relax, form a community, a cricket club, a footy club, a book reading club, a beer drinking, beef eating club, whatever you guys might belong to, and within that community, once you are accountable to each other and find love and respect for each other, that you might then build bottom up our beliefs and our opinions, and rather than project upon people your good idea, make known to the rest of the world that your group, through friendship, has had a good idea, and others, if they choose, can share in it. And when they see that your group is a good and healthy group that isn't evil because you can all bloody tolerate each other, and maybe that you post some photos or some posts, or you have some events, and come to understand that these people are trustworthy and are accountable, and then you might, after befriending them or after attempting to befriend them, they might let you.
Righto. So, yeah, that's Michael's response video, which I'll also link to in the description. And yeah, now I'm really chuffed with his response. It's very positive. So I suppose we've got to go to the next step and see if we can get other people into the idea. Yeah, Michael, I'll link to that. It's a good video to watch, but he talks about how, Gab AI, I don't know if people know about these things, and there's like minds.com, and they're like right-wing social media sites, and they have the same sort of characteristics of a Facebook or whatever, or a YouTube. What's the other one called? There's like another video site. I can't remember what it's called now. VidMe, I think. VidMe. And it's basically, they've made YouTube. They've duplicated it, but instead of censoring everyone, they just let people have their say. But I just don't think it suits a conservative mindset. Because, if you're a conservative, you're sort of on there and you're going, why are we shouting at each other? Let's have some rules of order and get things organized a bit clearer, and then, let's have some rules of order, pretty much, broadly speaking. So, yeah, thanks, Mike, for putting the time into doing a bit of a response, and I'll put this out and see if we can get more people talking about it, or at least happy about the idea. Right, so I heard about this book, Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman, from Paul Vanderklay. He's got a YouTube channel. He's a pastor, and he talks a lot about Jordan Peterson. And he's quite an interesting bloke. And so he mentioned a few things about this book that I knew I better get this book, because it's going to have some stuff in there for me. Right, so this is basically what the book says, right? The media of communication available to a culture are a dominant influence on the formation of the culture's intellectual and social preoccupations, right? And then he makes a really good case for this. So this book came out in 1985, and he starts off, saying that he thinks Aldous Huxley and his Brave New World were more on the money than George Orwell in 1984, Big Brother and sort of straight up tyranny. Rather, he says, like Aldous Huxley reckons, we're going to enjoy our, what's the right word? Yeah, we're going to, voluntarily and quite enjoyably give up our freedoms. We're not going to have them forced away from us. We're going to sort of give them up. Anyway, so he goes, the first chapter, I've read the first half of this book. I've got to finish it. There's two parts. So the first part makes the case pretty much. Chapter 1 is called The Medium is the Metaphor. And then chapter 2, Media as Epistemology. Then he talks about typographic times, when everything was text, and now how this peekaboo world has come about. Right, so, it's quite a weird thing to think, but yeah, it's like the media we use to communicate with each other is going to affect political life and social life in a massive way. So remember, this book was released in 1985, so when I get to television and number 6, internet there, just remember, this was pre-internet, this book. So Socrates, he was a philosopher. He used to teach people by talking. And then writing sort of came along, and he was skeptical about it. Plato, who was a student, took it up and wrote books and what have you. but he understood Socrates' criticisms, but he also understood that it was there to stay and it had pros. So Socrates' criticism was, goddamn, why have I got an itch in the throat? So Socrates' criticism was, if you can write notes or have a book, then you fool yourself into thinking you know more than you do, rather than if it's just got to be in your head. But writing became a big thing. Jeez, like. What is going on here? Sorry. Right, so writing became a big thing. And then you had the printing press got established, and then that spread it even further, instead of handwritten copies and things like that. And so he goes to talk about the age of exposition in the United States, which is sort of around their founding in late 1700s, early 1800s. And I found that pretty interesting because, you read the US Constitution and you just think, what are the chances that a bunch of blokes that were that articulate and what have you managed to get together and pull off something like that? But he points out that at that time, 95% of the male population was literate and 70% of the female population. So at that time, it was the most literate society on earth. And everything, if you wanted to know something, you sort of got it from reading, right? So then people spoke like they were reading something. So, and people had a big ability to absorb text. And, he talks about with these speeches like between Lincoln and Douglas, and this was before Lincoln was even president, and how people would watch these debates, and it'd be 7-hour-long debates, and people just had the mind for it, Yet, because writing, if anyone's ever done writing, that you're making a series of propositions, and you're trying to find criticisms, and then you're trying to put those criticisms down and advance your case, and that's kind of what happens when you read, right, in your head. That's how you work things out. And so, at that time, everything was, people just, that's how they were, because that's how they communicated with each other. If you wanted to know something, you had to get it from a book. And like he points out, the first 15 US presidents, before the photograph was invented, no one knew what they looked like. So that a president could walk past you in the street and you wouldn't know that was the president of the US. So that's just the time that, that's what it was like then. And so you kind of forget that, but you got to remind yourself that, the old days were pretty different to what we've got now. And, nowadays is very different to when this book came out in 1985. So then you get the photograph and the telegraph come out at the same sort of time. And the telegraph, obviously, you're not going to send a novel by telegraph. So it's all that short, sort of clickbaity headlines and photos. And he talks about how, you wind up with a different, all these different types of media have different epistemological biases. So epistemology, I've talked about in other videos, but it's, it's the study of truth, knowledge, justified knowledge and belief. And so, there's sort of an implicit consideration of what's true and how you come to truth with different types of media. So like with a photograph, because it's just a photograph, you can't actually, well, you can, but it's difficult to question the truth of a photograph. Is it faked or unfaked? And there's a bit in this book where he's talking about photographs and the nature of photographs, and I just thought straight away, Instagram, right? Because Instagram, people go to great lengths to make their lives more interesting with photographs. And it's almost rude to say to somebody, yeah, but the sunset wasn't that good, I was there, Yeah, so a photograph is a very different kind of media, and it has different implications for what's considered truth. With text, a good argument is considered truth. But now you get video, or you get memes, which is a picture with a bit of text. And of course, reading a book, if you're reading a book, it's not like the bloke next to you is reading the same thing so that you can both comment on it at the same time. But like with news, with television, you can comment on things at the same time. So anyway, this photo and telegraph technology, the sort of biases of those media got amplified into television. It's like news programs will do interviews, and they do these long interviews and record the whole thing, but they can't put all of it on, and so they edit it. And then of course the people who are conducting the interview have biases, so they present it in a certain way, which makes it look as though, and it's very difficult to question a video that's been edited, because you go, well, I don't believe that person thinks like that. I think you've just edited it like that. But you don't have the full video most of the time to go and make a point and prove somebody wrong. But yeah, so television, right? And this is quite a pessimistic book. He's saying we're amusing ourselves to death. It's not good. It's not. There's more types of media, but the dominant one is television, and it's forming everything, and it's not good for us. So I'll give you an example. Right, where am I? Television is the command center in subtler ways as well. Our use of other media, for example, is largely orchestrated by television. Through it, we learn what telephone system to use, what movies to see, what books, records and magazines to buy, what radio programs to listen to. Television arranges our communications environment for us in ways that no other medium has the power to do. As a small, ironic example of this point, consider this. In the past few years, we have been learning that the computer is the technology of the future. We are told that our children will fail in school and be left behind in life if they are not computer literate. We are told that we cannot run our businesses or compile our shopping list or keep our checkbooks tidy unless we own a computer. Perhaps some of this is true, but the most important fact about computers and what they mean to our lives is that we learn about all of this from television. Television has achieved the status of metamedium, an instrument that directs not only our knowledge of the world, but our knowledge of ways of knowing as well. I just found that really interesting, and I just wrote in the margins, bumped by internet. TV is now on the internet. You've got Netflix and YouTube, but I mean, the computer didn't bump TV, it was the internet. The fact that all knowledge is almost immediately accessible to you nowadays. If you go back to that, to buy a book would have been a huge sacrifice. We get books now for $14 or whatever, and that's like 3/4 of an hour of work for most people, the lowest paid people in the country. Back then it probably would have been the sacrifice of a week's wages or something. So yeah, information was hard to come by. Obviously in Socrates' time you had to know the right people to talk to, and you had to listen to them and get the information by just listening really well. Reading changed that. Of course, the printing press made things a lot cheaper. And then photography and television and the telegraph made things more entertaining. And so you obviously sort of, if you want to be entertained, you're going to default to those. You're not going to necessarily read a book. But yeah, this is, interesting stuff. And now we've got the internet, and we've got access to any information we want at any time. So we're drowning in information, right? And we've got multimedia, right? Right, so where are we now? Polls and leadership spills. This is another quote from the book. The news, he's basically saying we've got too much information, not enough of avenue for action. Right? We're left to act alone like an atomized individual. And you can't do most things without at least some cooperation, whether it's from 2 people or from 10 people or so on and so forth. But we sort of got all this information, but you have to find something to do with it as an atomized individual. And so he talks about, this is the TV age, which is so real right now, is the news elicits from you a variety of opinions about which you can do nothing, except offer them as more news about which you can do nothing. And that's just like these news polls in Australia, you know. So what do you think about the leader? And everyone gives their opinion, and the numbers go up and down, and the months go by, and there's leadership spill. You know, so yeah, all you can do about hearing the news about Malcolm Turnbull is, if you get asked whether you like his leadership or not, you can answer a poll. But yeah, so where we've got to go is we've got to increase the information action ratio. We need to make information actionable. You know, people can conduct their own individual sphere of things, but there's the sphere, the intersubjective sphere, where you've got, you know, cooperation, and 10 people want to do something, or 50 people, or a few thousand, you know, and they want to organize themselves. And we've got multimedia now. Like, you might say the internet or social media is the dominant, and it's definitely more dominant than TV. People talk about the things they see on social media. When you go to parties, you see Trump said this, and a bunch of people get wound up, and then there's a bunch of people trying to defend him and say it's out of context. And yeah, but you saying that, you're assuming that this is true and socialism isn't true. And yeah, so yeah, the dominant form of media now is social media, which itself is a form of multimedia, right? You've got speech, you know, you've got podcasts, and you can talk in a video, but you've got text, and you've got images, and you've got memes, which are images with a bit of text, and you've got videos, and all these things. I mean, I got text right here. They're all forms of multimedia, and social media itself is a form of multimedia. And so we've got to contextualize this multimedia environment. We've got to give it a context so that we can carry out more actions. And so how do you do it? So social media, you basically got a timeline, and you post things, and you got friends, and that sort of thing. And then everything can get shared or liked or commented on. And it just sort of sits there, and that's what it does. It's not actionable. It's just people agree or disagree, and like the people who agree just sort of tap each other on the back and go, yeah, I agree with you. And everyone who doesn't agree gets all like, oh. And that's all you do. You're just standing on opposite sides. It's not like people post something and then the people who agree meet up and do something about agreeing. It's just, and then when they see a whole bunch of people agreeing with something that they don't agree with, then they want to try and win more people over. Then, you know, it's just like a persuasion game. We've got to persuade more people, because then the West will fall apart. And it's like, maybe we've got to just get more done and act more. So the thing about this sort of software is there's going to be immutable features, like only voluntary win-win exchanges can take place, right? And that happens on social media. Like, you get a friend request, you accept or you ignore. And so you can build a network of people that you know on there, and then people can, instead of, you know, just liking a post or something, they can join a group, they can vote, you can do all sorts of things. You can table a motion, second motions, you can do all these sorts of things. And they're only going to happen win-win. It's not like somebody's going to get on and start driving your profile and making you join things that you don't want to join. Right? You've got control of your profile, and therefore you make your decisions. You can't force people to be in your group or exclude them, you know, just out of nowhere. You can be a part of this group if you pay the subs fee. So that's a huge feature that can't be changed, massive. And out of that, civil society broadly is going to come out of that. Then, of course, you've got clear principal-agent relationships. Like, if there's a football team and you're a member of it and you pay your subs, we know that you're the principal of that football club. But then that football club might be in an association, and you know that that association is the agent of the football club, of the football clubs, and you are a principal of one of those clubs. And so things build up in a very clear, like, for example, the EU isn't going to be able to just create a profile and then drag and drop all of the English citizens in there and say, oh, look, you can't Brexit, you all want to be here. No, the English citizens will have to agree to the EU kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? And so user actions, people consume content. So it might be a video on YouTube or some post link on Facebook, whatever. And because you can't just, we're going to have to piggyback social media. So if you see something and you click a link, and then it's now in this other environment, social media environment, where you can see that you can join, and you can see that this is written by this guy, which is part of these groups. He's a chairman of that society or association, and so on and so forth. And there's things that you can't do without joining. Well, that's going to attract people to then join and sign in. And then they can create their profiles, and they're the king of their own castle there. And they can create content, which then attracts more people. So it's a bit like a blog, but I reckon we've got to do something to limit just the amount. It's not going to be a place to post things. It'll just be a place where you can position your content in relation to each other. But you can, so you're now the king of your own castle. And then you can create, join, and manage like an agent that acts on behalf of people. And those agents can then act on behalf of people in further ways. So the club will decide the fees and how the money is spent and how the ground's looked after. The association looks after the fixtures and who will ref the games and so on and so forth. And so responsibilities get moved down in an appropriate way. And then, of course, this will create cooperation, decision making, rule of order, because you can't cooperate by waiting for total agreement. You gotta say, I've got my turn to table a motion. This is the motion I want to table. And you get somebody to second it if you can, or maybe no one wants to second it and it goes off. And you got to reevaluate and find out what's wrong with your proposal. Talk to people. Why didn't nobody second it? Or it gets seconded. And then there's amendments. And maybe you agree with those amendments. Maybe you don't. You go and talk to people. And then there's a vote. And it's like, right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to act. So I think it's easily done in theory. But it's and you go, well, how do you make a website where people can sign in? It's like, I don't know. And so you've got the website side of things, which is, because I don't have the temperament to be a coder. I'm like, my head is in the sky the whole time. I live in the clouds. And we need somebody who's down on earth, details orientated, the right sort of temperament. Somebody who's passionate about the idea and will just go for it. Or, of course, you can hire a developer, raise funds to do that somehow. Or you've got these like startup events where you go and pitch your idea and there'll be developers in the crowd listening, and then they can join your group and you can carry it out over the like startup weekend, and then you come up with a minimal viable product and present it to investors and so there's a whole world that I'm walking into now that's just a bit like but we need a website, which means we need some serious chops on the coding front, and maybe you just start off small, because I'm sure there's going to be database management and back-end stuff and front-end stuff and design and user interfaces, and so there's going to be a whole load of skills required to actually get it done. How we do this, it's going to be interesting. And then we need user groups, and I've got a few examples, but a political party might want to give its members a bit more say, and that's probably the problem with the Liberal Party is they don't listen to their members. It's just join, and it's a bit like the Conservative Party. I was hoping it would be a bit more open to its members, but it's more like, we represent you, peasants. Keep your opinions in line. Whereas I'd much rather a party that gave members more of a voice, more representation. But so maybe a political party will be open to giving such a website a go, or maybe just a couple of groups. I'm part of a little political group that maybe we could do something. We could definitely do something with it. But you got sports clubs, you got your P&C societies, and you've got, like, for example, in the wheat belt, we've got CBH, Central Bulk Handling, and they've got a structure. It's a cooperative, and there's a board, and then there's the management and admin side of things, and they're a bit separated, and the board has certain powers, and the members get a vote. But you talk to a lot of actual farmers, and they're not really happy with they don't think their views get enough say. It's too corporate, and they do things that the farmers aren't happy with, So something like that, because if you've got a bunch of farmers paying into something, and you create a group that before you hand that money over, you put all your funds together, you're going to get a bit of leverage. You're going to say, look, we want representation. We want it in such and such a way, and then we'll go from there. Could be done with university. People pay their uni fees, but there's no college anymore, which is sort of a student body representation. You don't really have that. You just go to uni and you pay the fees, and actually the government, the taxpayer, pays your fees, and so that's a bit of a dog show. But how you would wrestle your say or your power back, hopefully this civil media would be something that would help in that. If you've got a bunch of people pulling together their resources and saying, we'll hand over the resources when you give us access to cooperative tools, or whatever, you know what I'm saying. So I'm hoping that this civil media idea is, not just small groups of people, but it'll help people leverage these sort of institutions that have, institutions that have been taken over top down in quite big ways, and wrestle it back so that it's more bottom up, and you've got more say, and you can cooperate with each other to get what you want, rather than hoping that the guy at the top does the right thing, or that he ignores you, and 2 years down the road you're happy you get ignored. Another example is insurance companies, because you join a policy and you're pulled together with other people, and like, I can imagine insurance companies wanting to know what their customers want, and then creating their various policies out of the information they gather from people. So yeah, like, if you would like to see civil media become a reality, you can help us out in a bunch of ways. Steal the idea and get it built quickly for us, or if you could give us some suggestions about how we could get a website built, whether you know somebody who might know somebody who's a developer, or you know somebody who might know somebody who might know somebody who knows a couple of languages, or whether you know of events. We're in Perth. I know there's a thing called Startup Weekend. I went to one a few years ago, but I'm not a huge fan of that. I'd much rather have somebody who's passionate about it and doesn't have their head in the clouds like I do. So suggestions about how we can get this website made. Maybe it turns out we just put it on Kickstarter and we hire a developer and we get started that way, and then present some minimal viable product to investors or a group and get the group on it. But yeah, suggestions on how we can get a website made, or who can help us. Not really how, but how and who can help us. And then user group suggestions, whether you're part of a group that would love to get your hands on civil media, or somebody who's got a group, or you just you go, who would use that. So yeah, if you could help us out by getting in the comments section and just typing things in, and I'm just gonna do my best to talk to people, share this around, see what suggestions I get, and just follow those up, and hopefully you get, meet somebody, know somebody, and you finally meet somebody who can help you out. So that's basically my plan, is to just put this out there, share it around, and then follow up leads and just see what comes of it, because that's life. Most of it's, you're not going to see it coming. So yeah, if you want to watch that original video, which goes more into the philosophy, I'll put a link in the description, put a link to Michael's video in the description. And this one is more just about the idea that media affects the chat at a dinner party, at the dinner table, and affects your social life and your political life and civic life, and yeah, because I'm basically saying, if we change the context of our posts, everything's going to change. And I just want to point out that media is really powerful. It does actually have huge bearing on the way we talk to each other and communicate with each other and act together. And therefore, putting it in its right place and framing it properly is actually quite a powerful thing to do. And I'd really like to see if we can do it. Definitely want it done, even if somebody just takes this idea and creates a huge company and takes Facebook down. That's what I want to see. Righto, so thanks for watching. Share this, send it suggestions, send it to people you think might be interested, so on and so forth. Cheers guys. Thanks,